The day I realized my 15-year marriage was a lie, I was standing in my bakery's kitchen, surrounded by the sweet scent of vanilla and freshly baked bread. I had just finished making the final payment on Marcus's $200,000 debt. My hands were covered in flour when I got the text that would shatter my world. "I need space. I'm moving out." Just like that, after I had spent 3 years working doubles, sacrificing everything to clear his name, my husband was walking away. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how we got here, how I missed all the signs that were right in front of me. Before we begin this story, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Your support means the world to me, and trust me, this story is one you won't want to miss. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Rachel Winters, and this is the story of how saving my husband's financial future cost me my marriage, and how I fought back. The morning had started like any other at Sweet Dreams Bakery. The display cases were filled with fresh pastries, the coffee was brewing, and the regulars were starting to trickle in. Diana, my best friend and financial advisor, sat at her usual corner table, reviewing some paperwork. She'd been instrumental in helping me structure the debt repayment plan that had consumed the last 3 years of my life. "You did it, Rach," Diana said, looking up from her laptop with a bright smile. "After today's payment, Marcus's debt is officially cleared. How does it feel?" I wiped my hands on my apron, leaving ghostly white fingerprints on the dark fabric. Honestly, I'm exhausted, but proud. You know how much this meant to him, how ashamed he was when it all came out. Diana's smile faltered slightly, something flickering in her eyes that I couldn't quite read. "Have you told him yet? About making the final payment?" "Not yet. I wanted it to be special. I'm closing early tonight, making his favorite dinner. Remember how he used to joke that my Coco van was worth marrying me for?" The bell above the door chimed, and Henry Patterson walked in, his silver hair neatly combed, wearing his usual tweed jacket. My former business partner and mentor made his way to the counter, leaning heavily on his cane. "Something smells divine, Rachel. Fresh croissants, just out of the oven. Your timing is perfect, as always." I grabbed one still warm from the back, plating it with a small dish of house-made preserves. "How's retirement treating you?" "Better than it's treating you by the looks of it." He peered at me over his reading glasses. "When's the last time you took a day off?" "Soon," I promised, sliding his plate across the counter. "After tonight, actually. The debt's finally clear." Henry's expression darkened almost imperceptibly. "Marcus was at the golf club yesterday, with Nathan Cooper." My hands stilled on the register. Nathan Cooper was Marcus's former business partner, the one whose risky ventures had contributed to the massive debt in the first place. They hadn't spoken in years, or at least that's what Marcus had told me. "That's impossible," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Marcus was at a sales conference in Denver yesterday." Diana's head snapped up from her laptop. Henry carefully set down his fork. The silence that followed felt heavy, significant. Looking back, this was the moment. The first crack in the foundation of everything I thought I knew. "Rachel," Diana said slowly, "when's the last time you actually verified where Marcus was?" I wanted to dismiss the question. My husband wouldn't lie to me, not after everything we'd been through together. Not after I'd spent 3 years working 14-hour days, missing family events, postponing our plans for children, all to clear his debt. But something made me pull out my phone, open our joint account app. There it was. A charge from the country club's restaurant, time-stamped yesterday afternoon. In our hometown, not Denver. "I'm sure there's an explanation," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "He probably just stopped by before his flight." Diana and Henry exchanged glances. "Rachel," Henry said gently, I think it's time you and I had a serious conversation about what I've been hearing at the club, about Marcus, about Nathan Cooper, and about someone named Lauren Reed. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. Don't wait up tonight. Dinner with clients. The lies were starting to stack up like the layers of a cake, each one thin and seemingly insignificant on its own, but together forming something substantial, undeniable. I just didn't know yet how deep those layers went, or how bitter the taste of truth would be. The taste of betrayal is worse than any failed recipe I've ever created. That evening, instead of celebrating the final debt payment with coq au vin, I found myself sitting in Diana's home office, surrounded by stacks of financial documents. My hands trembled as we traced payment after payment, each one revealing a piece of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Look at these transfers, Diana said, spreading bank statements across her desk. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, all to an account we've never seen before. She highlighted another line. This one was made the day after you took out that second mortgage on the bakery. The mortgage I'd taken out to help clear Marcus's debt faster. The one that had me waking up at 3 a.m. every morning to meet with wholesale clients before regular business hours. My stomach churned as I remembered how proud I'd felt, telling Marcus I'd found a way to speed up our debt repayment plan. My sister Sam burst through the office door, still in her nurse's scrubs from her hospital shift. I got here as fast as I could. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a fierce hug. What did that bastard do? We're still figuring that out, Diana replied, not looking up from her calculator. But these numbers don't add up. Rachel, when did Marcus tell you he started working with Cooper Financial again? He didn't. My voice sounded strange, distant. He said he'd never work with Nathan again after the investment disaster. That was the whole point of the debt. Nathan's failed venture, remember? Sam picked up one of the statements, her brow furrowing. Then why is there a monthly payment going to Cooper Financial's subsidiary? It's been happening for 6 months now. Diana nodded grimly. Right around the time Marcus started those overnight sales conferences. Rachel, I hate to ask this, but have you checked your credit report recently? I hadn't. I'd been too busy running the bakery, too focused on making those debt payments, too trusting. Diana's computer hummed as she pulled up my credit history. The screen filled with lines of information, and her sharp intake of breath made my heart stop. There's a new credit card, she said slowly. Opened 3 months ago. Platinum level, joint account. She paused, her voice softening. Rachel, you're listed as a co-applicant, but I'm guessing you never signed anything. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of Diana's desk, my knuckles white. That's impossible. I would never. Identity theft, Sam spat. He forged your signature. It's fraud. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. Working late again. Don't hold dinner. Love you. The words love you blurred as tears filled my eyes. How many nights had I accepted these messages without question? How many lies had I swallowed along with my cold, solitary meals? We need to talk to Michael at the bank, Diana said, already reaching for her phone. If Marcus is forging your signature. Wait, I interrupted, a memory surfacing. Last month, he asked me to sign a bunch of insurance documents. Said it was routine updates for his company policy. I was in the middle of a huge wedding cake order, barely looked at them. Diana's face paled. We need those documents. Now. The drive to my house felt endless. Every traffic light, every stop sign was an eternity of wondering what other betrayals waited to be discovered. The house was dark when we arrived. Marcus was working late, after all. The insurance papers were in his home office, a room I rarely entered. It had always been his space, his sanctuary. The moment I opened the filing cabinet, I knew something was wrong. Files were missing, gaps where important documents should have been. But there, in the very back, was a folder labeled Life Insurance Updates. My hands shook as I opened it. The papers inside weren't insurance documents at all. They were property transfers, power of attorney forms, loan applications, all with my signature. Or what looked like my signature. "Oh my God," Sam whispered, looking over my shoulder. "Rachel, look at the dates. These go back." "Almost 3 years," I finished. "Right when we started the debt repayment plan." The room spun as realization hit me. While I'd been killing myself to clear his debt, Marcus had been setting up some kind of parallel financial life. But why? What was the end game? Diana's phone rang, shattering the tense silence. Her face grew increasingly grim as she listened. "That was Michael from the bank," she said after hanging up. "Rachel, you need to sit down for this." I sank into Marcus's leather office chair, the one he'd insisted on buying even when we were supposedly deep in debt. The chair that cost more than a month's worth of bakery supplies. "Marcus tried to access your business accounts today," Diana continued. "All of them. Michael blocked it because the paperwork looked suspicious, but..." She took a deep breath. "He also said Marcus has been asking questions about the property deed to Sweet Dreams." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Specifically, about transfer of ownership. The bakery. My bakery. The business I'd built from scratch, that I'd leveraged to save him from his supposed financial ruin. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about debt or secret credit cards. This was about taking everything. Sam's face hardened. "This ends now. We're calling the police." "No," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "Not yet. First, we need to understand exactly what he's planning. And then..." I picked up one of the forged documents, studying my fake signature. "Then we make sure he never does this to anyone else again." A text lit up my phone. Marcus again. "Great news. Just closed a huge deal. Celebrating with the team. Don't wait up." I texted back for the first time that day. "Congratulations, honey. Everything you deserve is coming to you." He had no idea how true those words would prove to be. Victoria Hayes's corner office gleamed with polished wood and quiet authority. I sat between Diana and Sam, watching as the attorney methodically arranged evidence across her massive desk. Bank. Statements, forged documents, property records, and surveillance photos of Marcus meeting with Nathan Cooper. "The good news," Victoria said, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses, "is that we have everything we need to nail him for fraud. The bad news is that he's already started moving assets. If we don't act fast, there might not be anything left to recover." My hands clenched around my coffee cup, still warm from the bakery. "He's not just trying to leave me. He's trying to destroy everything I've built." Victoria nodded grimly. "Based on these documents, Marcus and Nathan Cooper have been planning this for years. The debt was never real, or at least not as real as they made you believe. They used your dedication to paying it off as a smokescreen while they systematically transferred assets and set up shell companies." "The bakery," Diana interjected, spreading out more papers. "Show her what you found about the bakery." Victoria pulled out a thick folder. "They've been laying groundwork to claim the business. Was built with Marcus's investments. They're trying to establish that your success was only possible because of his financial support, despite the fact that you owned it free and clear before you married him." The room swayed slightly. Sam grabbed my hand, steadying me. "But I have the original paperwork," I protested. "Henry was my partner when we started. He can testify." "They've thought of that," Victoria interrupted. "Look at these." She slid over several documents, each bearing what looked like my signature. According to these, You transferred partial ownership to Marcus 3 years ago as part of the debt repayment plan. I never signed those. We know. The forgeries are good, but they won't stand up to expert analysis. The problem is, by the time we prove that in court, they could have already stripped the business bare. Diana leaned forward. So what's our plan? Victoria's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. We're going to set a trap, but first, we need to understand exactly who we're dealing with. She pressed a button on her desk phone. Send in Mr. Torres, please. Michael Torres, my longtime bank manager, entered carrying a thick portfolio. His usually cheerful face was somber. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I should have noticed something sooner. Just tell her what you found, Victoria urged. Michael opened his portfolio. We traced the money trail. Marcus and Nathan Cooper haven't just been planning to take the bakery. They're planning to flip it into a massive real estate development. They've been buying up properties all along your street through shell companies. Your bakery is the last piece they need. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The whole time I was killing myself to pay off his supposed debt. He was using your money to fund his real estate scheme, Victoria finished. The debt repayment was just a way to keep you too busy and stressed to notice what was really happening. Dr. Sarah Bennett, my therapist, had warned me about this in our last session. Financial abuse often goes hand in hand with emotional manipulation, she'd said. They keep you focused on fixing their problems while they systematically undermine your independence. Victoria spread out a new set of documents. Here's what we're going to do. First, we'll secure temporary injunctions to freeze the assets we can prove are fraudulent. Then we're going to give Marcus exactly what he wants, or what he thinks. He wants. Sam frowned. What do you mean? Rachel, how good are you at acting? Victoria asked. Acting? Yes, because tomorrow you're going to sign those ownership transfer papers Marcus has been pushing for. The ones he thinks will give him control of the bakery. Diana started to protest, but Victoria held up a hand. The papers he'll think you're signing aren't the papers you'll actually be signing. We're going to give him just enough rope to hang himself. For the next hour, Victoria laid out her plan. It was audacious, risky, and absolutely brilliant. By the time she finished explaining, even Sam was smiling. There's one more thing, Michael added. We found evidence that Marcus has been using similar tactics with other businesses. 3 other women have lost their companies to his and Cooper's schemes in the past 5 years. My blood ran cold. Have you contacted them? Victoria nodded. They're willing to testify. But first, we need to catch Marcus and Cooper in the act. That's where your bakery comes in. I thought about my little shop, about the dreams it represented, about the early mornings and late nights, the recipes passed down through generations, the customers who'd become family. Marcus hadn't just betrayed our marriage, he'd tried to steal my legacy. What do you need me to do? Victoria handed me a burner phone. First, you're going to text Marcus. Tell him you've been thinking about his suggestions regarding the bakery's future. Tell him you're ready to sign whatever he thinks is best. My hands shook as I typed the message. Within seconds, Marcus replied, Proud of you, honey. I'll have the papers ready tomorrow. This is the right decision. Now, Victoria continued, we need to get everything in place. Diana, coordinate with Michael to document every fraudulent transaction. Sam, take Rachel home and help her make everything look normal. Tomorrow morning, Rachel, you'll open the bakery like usual. But before you do, Michael added, pulling out more papers, we need to sign these. They're legitimate documents placing your business and personal assets in a protected trust. One that Marcus can't touch, no matter what happens. As I signed, I thought about the 3 years I'd spent working myself to exhaustion, believing I was helping my husband. All those missed family events, postponed dreams, and lonely nights had been part of his calculated plan. One last thing, Victoria said as we prepared to leave. From this moment on, assume every phone is tapped, Every email is monitored. Marcus needs to believe you're finally giving in to his pressure, that you're too tired to fight anymore. Sam squeezed my hand. You can do this, sis. We're all right here with you. I looked around the room at my support team, my sister, my best friend, my bank manager, my attorney. People who had seen through Marcus's manipulation when I was too close to recognize it. Tomorrow, then, I said, standing straighter. Time to show my husband exactly what happens when you try to steal a baker's dreams. As we left Victoria's office, my phone buzzed with another text from Marcus. You won't regret this decision, Rachel. Trust me. I almost laughed at those last two words, trust. Such a small word for such a devastating weapon. But Marcus was about to learn that trust, like revenge, was a dish best served cold. Dawn broke over Sweet Dreams Bakery as I unlocked the front door, the familiar scent of yeast and coffee failing to calm my racing heart. Everything had to look normal today. Everything had to be perfect. Marcus couldn't suspect that anything had changed, that I now saw through his elaborate facade. My hands moved automatically through the morning routine, firing up the ovens, preparing dough, setting up the display cases. Each motion practiced over years of early mornings, while my mind raced through Victoria's carefully crafted plan. The bell above the door chimed precisely at 6:30. Right on schedule, Diana murmured from behind the counter, disguised in a borrowed bakery uniform. She'd insisted on being here, playing the role of a new employee. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of Sam's car parked across the street, Michael Torres sitting inconspicuously in the passenger seat. Nathan Cooper walked in first, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the homey atmosphere of my bakery. Marcus followed, and my stomach churned at the sight of his practiced smile. The same smile he'd worn while watching me work myself to exhaustion paying off his fictional debt. Rachel, sweetheart, Marcus called out, striding toward the counter. You look tired. Have you been here since dawn again? The concern in his voice made my skin crawl. How many times had he used that same tone while secretly orchestrating my downfall? I forced my lips into a smile, remembering Victoria's coaching from the night before. Play into his expectations, she'd said. Let him think he's winning. You know me, I replied, wiping flour from my hands. Always the first one here, last one to leave. I caught the subtle smirk Cooper and Marcus exchanged. They thought my dedication to the bakery would make their takeover even easier. That's actually what we wanted to discuss, Cooper said smoothly, placing his briefcase on a nearby table. Marcus tells me you're finally ready to think about the future of this place. Diana busied herself wiping down tables, staying within earshot while appearing completely absorbed in her work. Through the front window, I spotted Victoria Hayes walking past, seemingly engrossed in her phone but actually checking that her hidden cameras were in position. Yes, I said, letting my voice waver slightly. Marcus has been telling me I work too hard, that it's time to think about scaling back. Cooper's smile widened. Exactly. You've built something wonderful here, Rachel. But don't you think it's time to let someone else handle the business side? Let professionals take some of that burden off your shoulders? The hidden recorder in my apron pocket caught every word. I remembered Victoria's advice. Let them spell it out. Let them think they're convincing you. I suppose, I said hesitantly. Marcus mentioned something about restructuring the ownership. Just some simple paperwork, Marcus interjected, reaching for my hand across the counter. You won't have to worry about anything. We'll handle all the details. The bell chimed again. Henry Patterson hobbled in, right on cue, his timing impeccable as always. Rachel, my dear, I was hoping to catch you before the morning rush. I saw Marcus tense slightly. Henry had been my original business partner, the one person who could testify that the bakery had been established long before Marcus entered my life. The one loose end in their careful plan. Henry, Marcus said, his voice tight. What a surprise. Rachel's actually in a meeting right now. Oh, this won't take long, Henry assured him, settling into a chair with deliberate slowness. Just needed to drop off those old partnership documents Rachel asked about. Found them in my attic last night. Cooper's hand tightened on his briefcase. Documents? From when we first opened the place, Henry explained cheerfully. Rachel mentioned wanting copies for her records. Always good to have the original. Paperwork, isn't it? Marcus's smile became strained. That won't be necessary. We're actually updating all the paperwork today. Moving forward, not looking back. I watched the subtle exchange of glances between Marcus and Cooper. They hadn't counted on Henry appearing with proof of the bakery's original ownership. Through the window, I saw Sam typing rapidly on her phone, undoubtedly updating Victoria about this new development. The papers are ready, Cooper announced, clearly eager to proceed before Henry could say more. He opened his briefcase, spreading documents across the counter. It's all very straightforward. Just a simple transfer of managing rights, streamlining the business structure. Diana dropped a plate behind the counter, the crash making everyone jump. As she apologized profusely, bending to clean up the mess, I saw her slip a tiny camera from her pocket, positioning it to capture the documents. Perhaps we should do this in the office, Marcus suggested, eyeing Henry warily. No, I said quickly, remembering Victoria's instructions to keep them in the public area. I'd rather stay out here, in case customers come in. Cooper pushed the papers toward me, offering an expensive pen. Just sign here and here. Marcus will handle everything else. I stared at the documents, seeing the carefully hidden clauses Victoria had warned me about. The ones that would give them complete control not just of the bakery, but of all my personal assets. The trap was almost ready. Just one more piece, needed to fall into place. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Lauren Reed just parked around the corner. She's waiting in a silver Mercedes. Marcus's secret partner in more ways than one. Victoria's investigation had uncovered their relationship, their shared offshore accounts, their plans for after the takeover was complete. Now she was here, waiting to celebrate their victory. Something wrong? Marcus asked, noting my hesitation. I shook my head, picking up the pen. No, just nervous, I guess. This is a big step. Trust me, sweetheart, he said, using the endearment that had once made my heart flutter. This is the best thing for everyone. I positioned the pen above the signature line, my hand trembling, not from fear but from anticipation. In my pocket, the burner phone Victoria had given me vibrated once, the signal that everything was in place. Actually, I said, straightening up, before I sign, there's someone else who should be here. Someone who's been very involved in these plans. I looked directly at Marcus. Why don't you call Lauren and ask her to join us? The color drained from his face. Behind him, Cooper took an involuntary step backward, and through the window, I saw Victoria Hayes striding purposefully toward the bakery door, a team of legal assistants in her wake. The bell chimed one final time. The silence in Sweet Dreams Bakery crackled with tension as Marcus's face shifted from confidence to confusion to barely concealed panic. Victoria Hayes strode through the door, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors like a judge's gavel. Lauren Reed, I repeated, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Your girlfriend should really be here for this, Marcus. After all, she's been helping you plan it for months. I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus stammered, but his eyes darted to the window, where Lauren's silver Mercedes was clearly visible. Nathan Cooper began quietly gathering the papers spread across the counter. Leave those exactly where they are, Mr. Cooper, Victoria commanded, her voice sharp enough to slice steel. They're evidence now. Diana stepped out from behind the counter, dropping her act as a new employee. Everything's been recorded, Rachel, from the moment they walked in. Marcus's face hardened as realization dawned. You set us up. No, honey, I said, pulling out the stack of forged documents we'd discovered. You set yourself up. I just finally started paying attention. Victoria's assistants moved efficiently through the bakery, photographing documents and securing evidence. Through the window, I saw Michael Torres emerging from Sam's car, carrying boxes of financial records. This is ridiculous, Cooper snapped, reaching for his briefcase. We're leaving. I wouldn't, Victoria advised coldly. Unless you want to add fleeing the scene to your list of charges. Fraud, conspiracy, identity theft. The list is already quite impressive. The bell chimed again. Lauren Reed burst in, her designer outfit as polished as ever, though her face showed signs of strain. Marcus, what's going on? Why are there people with cameras outside? Perfect timing, I said, turning to face the woman who'd helped plot my financial ruin. We were just discussing the real estate development plans. You know, the ones you and Marcus were going to fund with my bakery's assets. Lauren froze, her expensive handbag slipping from her shoulder. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus, who are these people? Oh, let me make the introductions, Diana interjected, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Victoria Hayes, criminal fraud attorney. Michael Torres, bank fraud investigator. And those people outside? FBI Financial, Crimes Division. Marcus's mask finally cracked completely. Rachel, baby, listen to me. This is all a misunderstanding. I was trying to help you, to make the bakery more profitable. By forging my signature, I pulled out more documents. By creating fake debt to keep me working myself to exhaustion while you siphoned money into offshore accounts. Cooper stepped forward, his attorney's smoothness taking over. These are serious accusations. You can't prove. Actually, we can, Victoria interrupted. She nodded to one of her assistants who set up a laptop on the counter. Shall we review the evidence? Let's start with the surveillance footage from your meetings with the development company. The ones where you explicitly discuss using fraudulent documents to seize Rachel's assets. Lauren's composure cracked. Marcus, you said this was legal. You said she'd signed everything willingly. He lied, I said simply. That's what he does. Just like he lied about the debt I spent 3 years paying off. Tell me, Lauren, what was my money really funding? The down payment on your new house together? Marcus lunged for the documents on the counter, but Sam, who'd slipped in quietly during the chaos, was faster. She grabbed them, stepping back as Henry positioned himself between Marcus and the evidence. Don't embarrass yourself further, Henry advised, his gentle demeanor hardening. I've watched you manipulate Rachel for years. Not anymore. You don't understand, Marcus pleaded, looking around desperately. Rachel, the development deal would have made us millions. We could have had everything. We? I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. There is no we, Marcus. There. Hasn't been for a long time. I was just too busy paying off your fictional debt to notice you were planning your exit strategy. Victoria held up a hand as Marcus tried to speak again. I suggest you save your explanations for court. Right now, you all have a choice to make. Cooperate voluntarily with our investigation, or face additional charges for obstruction. Cooper's legal instincts kicked in. We need to call our attorneys. Already done, Victoria smiled coldly. They're waiting at my office, along with the other victims of your property fraud scheme. You remember Angela Martinez, Sarah Klein, the other business owners you've defrauded. Lauren's face went pale. Other victims? Marcus, you said I was special, that this was a one-time opportunity. Special? I shook my head. You're just the latest version of his con. How much of your own money has he convinced you to invest in this development deal? The look of dawning horror on her face told me everything. She hadn't just been Marcus's accomplice, She'd been another mark in his elaborate scheme. "The offshore accounts," she whispered. "The property investments?" "All traceable," Michael Torres confirmed, setting down his boxes of evidence. "And all thoroughly documented. Your signature's on quite a few interesting documents, Ms. Reed." Lauren grabbed her phone, fingers shaking as she pulled up her banking app. The color drained from her face completely. "It's gone. Everything's gone." "Marcus," Cooper's voice held a dangerous edge. "What exactly has happened to our investment capital?" For the first time, real fear crept into my husband's expression. He was watching his carefully constructed house of cards collapse, realizing he was trapped between his angry accomplices and the law. "I can explain everything," he started, but Cooper cut him off. "Save it for your defense attorney." Cooper turned to Victoria. "I believe you mentioned something about cooperation?" Victoria nodded to her assistants, who began preparing formal statements. The FBI agents outside started moving in. Through it all, I stood behind my bakery counter, watching the man I'd loved, the man I'd sacrificed everything to save, revealed as nothing but a common con artist. "Rachel," Marcus tried one last time, his voice breaking. "Everything I did for us." "No," I said quietly. "Everything I did for us. Everything you did for yourself. The only thing I don't understand is why. We could have had a real life, a real marriage. Instead, you chose this." "Mrs. Winters," one of Victoria's assistants approached. "We're ready for your official statement." As I moved to follow her, I paused beside Marcus. "You know what the saddest part is? I would have given you anything. All you had to do was be honest. Instead, you made me waste 3 years paying off a debt that never existed, while you planned to steal everything I'd built." For the first time, I saw genuine regret flash across his face. But it wasn't regret for hurting me, for betraying our marriage. It was regret for getting caught. "Get them out of my bakery," I said to Victoria. As the authorities led Marcus, Cooper, and Lauren away, I turned to Diana, Sam, and Henry. "I believe we have some real paperwork to file, the kind that ensures no one can ever try to steal this place again." Through the window, I watched Marcus being placed in a police car. 3 years of my life spent paying off his lies. But as I looked around at my bakery, at the life I'd built, I realized something important. Those 3 years hadn't been wasted after all. They'd taught me exactly who I was and exactly what I was capable of. The evening after Marcus's arrest, rain pattered against the windows of Sweet Dreams Bakery as Victoria Hayes spread file after file across the tables. Each manila folder revealed another layer of deception, another carefully orchestrated lie that had shaped the last 3 years of my life. "The scope of the fraud is staggering," Victoria said, highlighting another document. "Marcus didn't just create fake debt, he built an entire fictional financial history. Every time you made a payment thinking you were clearing his debt, the money was being funneled through shell companies." Diana sat beside me, her hand steady on my shoulder as we reviewed bank statements showing the elaborate web of transfers. "Look at these dates," she pointed out. "The day you took out the second mortgage on the bakery, he opened 3 new offshore accounts." My fingers traced the dates on the papers, dates that corresponded with so many sacrificed moments. "This one," I said quietly. "This transfer was the day I canceled our anniversary trip. He told me we couldn't afford it because of the debt payments." Sam paced behind us, her nurse's instincts making her attentive to my every reaction. "While you were canceling vacations, he was booking luxury hotels with Lauren Reed." The evidence of Marcus's parallel life with Lauren lay scattered across another table. Photos, receipts, private investigator reports. A whole secret relationship conducted while I worked 14-hour days, believing I was helping my husband recover from financial ruin. Michael Torres entered, shaking rain from his coat. The forensic accountants finished their preliminary review. He placed a new stack of documents on the table. They've identified at least 12 other potential victims across 3 states. Other victims? The words felt hollow in my mouth. Marcus and Cooper had a pattern, Victoria explained. They would identify successful small business owners, particularly women who had built their businesses from scratch. Then they would orchestrate financial crises that made their victims vulnerable to manipulation. A knock at the bakery door interrupted us. Through the rain-streaked glass, I recognized Angela Martinez, one of the women Victoria had mentioned during the confrontation. I moved to let her in, noting her expensive suit, her air of professional confidence, and the familiar look of betrayal in her eyes. "I came as soon as I got Victoria's call," Angela said, water dripping from her umbrella. "When I saw Marcus's arrest on the news, I had to know if it was the same man." "Tell Rachel what happened to your consulting firm," Victoria encouraged gently. Angela's story poured out like the rain outside. A familiar pattern of manufactured debt, exhausting repayment schedules, and carefully forged documents. By the time I realized what was happening, they had already transferred ownership of my company. 3 years of my life, my father's retirement investment, all gone. "Until now," Victoria interjected, "with Marcus and Cooper's arrest, we can begin recovery proceedings for all their victims." My phone buzzed, a notification from the local news website. Someone had leaked Marcus's arrest. The headline screamed, "Local business owner uncovers multi-state financial fraud ring." Below it, my wedding photo stared back at me. Marcus's smile now seeming more predatory than loving. "Rachel?" Henry's voice came from the kitchen. "There's something else you need to see." In the back office, Henry had opened my old filing cabinet. "Remember when you first bought the bakery? The initial investment you made?" I nodded. The money had come from selling my mother's wedding ring after she passed, a sacrifice that had felt right at the time, turning one form of love into another. "Look at this." Henry pulled out a faded document. "The day after you married Marcus, someone accessed these files. The original investment records were photographed." "He was planning this from the beginning," I whispered. "From the very first day." Sam's hand tightened on my shoulder. "The bakery was always his target. You were just the means to an end," I finished. A new wave of anger washed over me, different from the shock and betrayal of the arrest. This was deeper, colder. Every anniversary dinner, every loving gesture, every moment I'd thought we were building a life together, all of it had been calculated, measured, planned. Victoria's phone chimed. "Cooper's attorney is offering a deal. He's willing to testify against Marcus, provide details about other victims." "Let me guess," Diana said bitterly. "He's claiming he was just the lawyer, that Marcus was the mastermind." "Actually," Victoria's lips curved in a grim smile, "he's giving us Lauren Reed. Apparently, she wasn't just Marcus's girlfriend. She was their spotter, identifying potential victims through her work as a business consultant." The pieces clicked into place. Lauren's occasional visits to the bakery, her careful questions about my business model, her interest in my success story. She hadn't just been my husband's mistress, she'd been assessing me as a target. Michael spread more documents across the desk. We found Lauren's files, detailed assessments of potential victims, ranked by vulnerability. "Rachel, your file." He hesitated. "Show me." The manila folder contained a complete profile of my life. Photos of the bakery, notes about my mother's death, observations about my dedication to helping others. At the top, in Lauren's elegant handwriting, perfect target, strong business, emotionally invested, trusting nature. Estimated value, $2. 4M after development. My hands shook as I closed the file. They didn't just want the bakery, they wanted to break me. But they failed, Sam said fiercely. You're stronger than they knew. A new knock at the door revealed Sarah Klein, another victim from Marcus's past. Like Angela, she carried the weight of betrayal in her stance, but also something else: determination. As more victims arrived, drawn by the news of Marcus's arrest, the bakery filled with stories of manipulation, loss, and resilience. Each woman had thought she was alone, that her story was unique. Now, surrounded by others who understood, something powerful began to take shape. We need to make sure this never happens to anyone else, Angela declared, her consultant's mind already working. Some kind of support network, a way to share information. Start with the bakery, I found myself saying. Use this space. Turn what they tried to destroy into something that helps others. Victoria nodded approvingly. The legal proceedings will take months, possibly years. Having a support system in place for victims of financial fraud. Not victims, I corrected, looking around at these strong, capable women who had survived Marcus's manipulations. Survivors. My phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus's number, probably using his one phone call to make one last attempt at manipulation. I deleted it without reading it. Outside, the rain had stopped. Through the bakery windows, I could see the first stars appearing. 3 years of my life spent believing my husband's lies, working to pay off debt that never existed. But standing here, surrounded by women who understood, who had faced the same betrayal and emerged stronger, I realized something profound. This ending was also a beginning. What Marcus had intended as my destruction would become a foundation for something he could never understand. The power of women supporting women, turning pain into purpose, betrayal into strength. Morning light filtered through the windows of Diana's home office as we dug deeper into Marcus's financial maze. Empty coffee cups littered the desk, testament to our sleepless night of investigation. Sam had called in sick to her nursing shift, determined to help uncover the full scope of her brother-in-law's deception. Look at this, Diana murmured, highlighting another transaction on her laptop. Every time you made a major debt payment, there was a corresponding transfer to an account in the Cayman Islands. The amounts match perfectly. My hands trembled as I reached for another coffee cup. How much? Over the past 3 years? Diana's fingers flew across the calculator. You've paid off roughly $200,000 in supposed debt, but these offshore transfers total nearly $300,000. Sam leaned over her shoulder, frowning at the screen. Where did the extra $100,000 come from? The bakery's emergency fund, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Marcus convinced me to give him access last year, said we needed to consolidate our accounts to improve our credit score for the debt repayment plan. The sound of a car door slamming made us all jump. Through the window, I saw Michael Torres hurrying up the walkway, clutching a thick folder. Diana let him in, and he spread the contents across her dining room table without preamble. You were right about Cooper Financial, he said grimly. I pulled every transaction between them and Marcus's accounts. It's not just Rachel. There's a pattern here going back years. The documents told a story that made my stomach churn. Before meeting me, Marcus had been involved in multiple failed business ventures with Nathan Cooper. Each failure had left a trail of debt and broken promises. But something changed after our marriage. The timing, Sam said, pointing to a series of dates. Look, everything shifted right after you inherited Mom's life insurance money. The inheritance I'd used to expand the bakery, to build my dream of a bigger business. The expansion Marcus had enthusiastically supported, even while claiming to be drowning in debt. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. Meeting ran late again. Don't wait up. Love you. The words that had once seemed caring now felt like poison. Diana opened another file on her computer. I had my friend at the title company do some digging. Marcus has been quietly buying up properties around the bakery through shell companies, small businesses, family-owned shops. The development plans, I breathed. He's not just trying to take my bakery, he's planning to remake the entire street. Sam's phone chimed with an alert. She checked it and her face hardened. Rachel, you need to see this. Now. She handed me her phone, open to a real estate listing. There it was. My bakery, my life's work, already advertised as coming soon on an exclusive development website. The listing included architectural renderings showing my beloved shop transformed into a sleek, modern retail space. The date on this listing, Diana said quietly. It was posted 3 months ago, before I'd even made the final debt payment. Before Marcus had started pushing me to sign those new business documents. He'd been planning this all along, counting on my trust and exhaustion to blind me to his true intentions. A knock at the door made us all freeze. Michael checked through the peephole, then relaxed. It's Victoria Hayes. The attorney strode in, impeccably dressed despite the early hour. I've been reviewing everything you sent over, she said, setting down her briefcase. Rachel, what do you know about Lauren Reed? The name hit me like ice water. She's a business consultant Marcus met through work. Why? Victoria pulled out her tablet, showing us a series of photographs. Lauren Reed meeting with Nathan Cooper. Lauren touring my bakery when I was too busy with debt payments to notice. Lauren and Marcus. The images blurred as tears filled my eyes. Not just business meetings, intimate dinners, stolen kisses, hotel receipts. While I'd been working myself to exhaustion trying to clear his debt, my husband had been planning a future with someone else. There's more, Victoria said gently. Lauren Reed isn't just Marcus's mistress. She's a key player in Cooper Financial's operations. Her specialty? Identifying vulnerable business owners, particularly women who've built something valuable from scratch. Diana's hand found mine under the table as Victoria continued. We found her assessment of you, Rachel. Written 6 months before you married Marcus. It's thorough. The document she showed us made my blood run cold. Every detail of my life, my business, my emotional vulnerabilities laid out like a blueprint for exploitation. At the bottom, a handwritten note. Perfect target. Strong emotional investment in business. History of self-sacrifice for family. Estimated value after development. $2. 4M. I was never anything but a mark to him, I whispered. Not just you, Michael interjected, spreading out more files. We found similar assessments of other business owners. Women who lost everything to supposed debt repayment schemes, only to have their properties snapped up by Cooper Financial's development subsidiaries. Sam's nurse training kicked in as she noticed my hands shaking. That's enough for now. She needs time to process. But Victoria shook her head. We don't have time. Look at this. She pulled up an email chain on her tablet. They're accelerating their plans. The development company is scheduled to begin preliminary work next week. Next week? The room spun slightly. But I haven't signed anything. Check your signature on these, Diana said suddenly, pulling out the stack of documents we'd found in Marcus's office. Really look at them. I stared at the elegant loops and swirls that looked so much like my handwriting. These aren't just forged signatures, I realized. They're combinations of real signatures, copied from different documents. Victoria nodded approvingly. Exactly. They took legitimate signatures from insurance forms, loan applications, even birthday cards, and pieced them together to create new ones. It's sophisticated fraud, which makes it easier to prove in court. My phone lit up with another text from Marcus. Great news. Got that promotion I was hoping for. Celebration dinner tomorrow? The promotion that would give him access to more potential victims, more businesses to destroy. My fingers hovered over the phone, remembering Victoria's advice to maintain normalcy while we gathered evidence. "Congratulations, honey," I typed back, each word tasting like ash. "Can't wait to celebrate." "We need to move fast," Victoria said, already pulling out more documents, "before they can transfer any more assets or destroy evidence. Rachel, are you ready to hear the plan?" I looked around the room at my support system. My sister, my best friend, my bank manager, my attorney. People who had seen through Marcus's manipulation when I was too blind to recognize it. "Tell me everything," I said, straightening my spine. "It's time to show my husband exactly what happens when you underestimate a baker's ability to turn up the heat." Victoria Hayes's corner office overlooked the city skyline, the morning sun casting long shadows across her mahogany desk. Dr. Sarah Bennett, my therapist, sat beside me, her steady presence an anchor as Victoria laid out the devastating scope of Marcus's betrayal. "Financial abuse is insidious," Dr. Bennett explained, watching me process the mounting evidence. "It's not just about money, it's about control, about slowly eroding someone's independence while making them believe they're being helped." Michael Torres spread more bank statements across the desk. Every time Rachel made a debt payment, Marcus and Cooper were investing that money in their development scheme. They weren't just stealing her money, they were using it to fund their next victims. "The property acquisitions around your bakery weren't random," Victoria added, pulling up a map on her computer. Red dots marked each business Marcus and Cooper had targeted. "They've been systematically buying out small business owners, using the same debt manipulation tactics they used on you." Diana, who had been quietly analyzing financial records, suddenly sat up straighter. "Wait a minute, look at these dates." She pointed to a series of transactions. The day Rachel took out the second mortgage on the bakery, Marcus opened an account in Lauren Reed's name. My hands clenched in my lap. Lauren, the other woman, the accomplice, the one who had assessed me as a perfect target before Marcus ever claimed to fall in love with me. "What's interesting," Victoria mused, "is that Lauren might not be as willing a participant as we thought." She pulled out another file. "Look at her own financial records. Marcus has been moving money from her accounts too." Sam leaned forward. "He's scamming his own girlfriend?" "Classic con man behavior," Dr. Bennett noted. "They often run multiple schemes simultaneously, playing different roles for different marks." A knock at the door interrupted us. Henry Patterson entered, looking troubled. "The development company representatives were at the bakery again this morning. They're getting impatient, asking when the ownership transfer will be finalized." Victoria's smile turned predatory. "Perfect. Let them get impatient. The more pressure they apply, the more mistakes they'll make." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Honey, the business consultants need to meet tomorrow. Just some routine paperwork to sign. Nothing to worry about." Diana read the message over my shoulder and snorted. "Nothing to worry about, except losing everything you've built." "We can use this," Victoria said, already typing on her laptop. "Their eagerness to close the deal quickly works in our favor. But first, we need to secure your assets." Michael pulled out a thick folder. "I've already frozen the accounts we know are compromised. But Rachel, we need to talk about the bakery's property deed." My heart stuttered. "What about it?" "Marcus has been laying groundwork to challenge your ownership," Victoria explained. "He's created a paper trail suggesting he invested in the business before your marriage." "But that's impossible," I protested. "I bought the bakery with my mother's life insurance money. Henry was there, he can testify." "We've already filed Henry's affidavit," Victoria assured me. "But Marcus has created very convincing forgeries. Look at this." The document she showed me appeared to be a loan agreement, dated 6 months before I met Marcus. My signature, or what looked like my signature, was at the bottom. "How did he get this?" My voice shook. "Remember all those insurance documents he had you sign last year?" Diana asked gently. "He wasn't just collecting your signature. He was gathering samples from different years, different contexts. They pieced them together to create new signatures on backdated documents. Sam cursed under her breath. I always knew my brother-in-law was a snake, but this. Dr. Bennett leaned forward. Rachel, how are you processing all of this? I stared at the false loan document, at the careful forgery of my signature. I keep thinking about all the nights I worked late at the bakery, trying to meet those debt payments. How proud I was every time I made a major payment, thinking I was helping us build a future together. That pride wasn't misplaced, Dr. Bennett said firmly. You showed incredible strength and dedication. Marcus exploited those qualities, but he didn't diminish them. Victoria cleared her throat. We need to talk about Lauren Reed. She's the weak link in their operation. How so? Michael asked. Because Marcus is playing the same game with her that he played with you, Victoria explained, showing me more documents. Those accounts he opened in her name? They're being drained. My guess is she has no idea. Diana's eyes lit up. If we can prove he's defrauding her too, she might be willing to turn on him, Victoria finished. But we have to move carefully. Right now, she still thinks she's his partner, not his next victim. What do you need me to do? I asked, my voice stronger than I felt. Victoria's plan was elegant in its simplicity. We would give Marcus exactly what he wanted, or what he thought he wanted. Let him believe his pressure was working, that my exhaustion and trust were making me vulnerable to manipulation. The development company has scheduled a meeting for tomorrow, she explained. They'll present documents for you to sign, transferring control of the bakery. And I'm supposed to just sign them? The thought made me nauseous. No, Victoria smiled. You're supposed to make them think you're going to sign them. Meanwhile, we'll have our own documents ready, ones that will expose their entire operation. Michael produced more papers. We've already documented every fraudulent transfer, every forged signature, the moment they try to execute their plan. We spring the trap, Sam finished, a fierce gleam in her eye. But first, Dr. Bennett interjected, we need to discuss how to handle tomorrow emotionally. Confronting someone who's betrayed you at this level. I thought about the bakery, about the dreams it represented, about the early mornings and late nights, the recipes passed down through generations, the customers who'd become family. Marcus hadn't just betrayed our marriage, he'd tried to steal my legacy. I can handle it, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. He spent 3 years making me believe I was saving him from debt. Tomorrow he'll learn what it really means to owe someone. Victoria nodded approvingly. Remember, let him think he's winning. Let him show his hand completely. The best revenge isn't just exposing his fraud. It's making sure he can never do this to anyone else. My phone buzzed one final time. Marcus again. By the way, honey, Lauren from the development company mentioned wanting to see the bakery's books tomorrow. Just standard due diligence. You don't mind, right? I looked at Victoria, who nodded. With steady fingers, I typed, Of course not. Whatever helps move things along. The pieces were in place. Tomorrow, Marcus would learn that some debts can never be repaid with money. The courthouse steps gleamed in the morning sun as Victoria Hayes guided me through a sea of reporters. Each flash of cameras captured my straight spine, my steady gaze, the look of a woman ready for justice, not a victim seeking revenge. Inside, the marble halls echoed with purposeful footsteps as we made our way to courtroom 3. The prosecution has found 3 more victims, Victoria whispered as we took our seats. Women from different states, all with similar stories. Marcus and Cooper's scheme was bigger than we imagined. Angela Martinez sat beside me, her consulting firm's records spread across her lap. Behind us, Sarah Klein clutched a folder containing evidence of her own devastating losses. We were no longer isolated targets. We were a united front. Marcus entered with his defense team, his expensive suit failing to hide the strain of the past few weeks in custody. His eyes met mine briefly, and I saw a flicker of something that might have been regret. Not for his actions, but for getting caught. Lauren Reed was conspicuously absent. After discovering how thoroughly Marcus had played her, she'd turned state's evidence. Her testimony about their victim selection process had blown the case wide open. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Eleanor Montgomery entered. Her reputation for handling complex financial fraud cases had preceded her. She studied the courtroom over her reading glasses, her gaze sharp and assessing. "Before we begin," Judge Montgomery announced, "I want to address the additional evidence submitted this morning." She held up a thick folder. "Mr. Cooper's offshore. Account records make for fascinating reading." Nathan Cooper shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His lawyer leaned forward, but before he could speak, the judge continued. "Particularly interesting is the pattern of transfers coinciding with each victim's supposed debt payments. Ms. Hayes, would you care to elaborate?" Victoria stood, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom. "Your Honor, these records demonstrate that every time one of the victims made a payment toward their fictional debt, the money was immediately transferred through a series of shell companies. The final destination? A development fund controlled by the defendants, used to acquire properties from their next targets." Marcus's attorney jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor. These allegations are speculative." "The evidence speaks for itself," Victoria countered, producing more documents. "We've mapped every transaction. Each victim's payments can be traced directly to property acquisitions in other victims' neighborhoods." Diana, sitting in the gallery behind me, squeezed my shoulder as Victoria presented our carefully compiled evidence. Every late night spent tracking transactions, every hour poring over financial records, was finally bearing fruit. "Furthermore," Victoria continued, "we've identified the pattern of identity theft and forgery used to create the appearance of legitimate business transactions." She projected a series of documents onto the courtroom screen. "Note the signature, progression, how they collected samples from various sources to create convincing forgeries." Michael Torres took the stand next, his banking expertise lending weight to his testimony. "The level of sophistication in this fraud scheme indicates long-term planning and multiple co-conspirators. Each victim was carefully selected, their businesses evaluated for maximum profit potential." As Michael detailed the financial manipulation, I watched Marcus's facade finally crack. His practiced charm gave way to nervous fidgeting as more evidence mounted. Cooper's attorney passed him urgent notes, but the damage was done. "The prosecution calls Lauren Reed," the district attorney announced. Lauren entered, her designer confidence replaced by genuine remorse. She avoided Marcus's gaze as she took the stand, focusing instead on the judge. "Ms. Reed," the DA began, "please explain your role in identifying potential targets for the defendants." Lauren's testimony was devastating in its detail. She described how she would pose as a business consultant, evaluating small businesses for their investment potential. How she would report back on owners who showed particular dedication to their work, who had strong emotional connections to their businesses. "We called them high investment targets," she explained, her voice trembling. "People who would do anything to save their businesses, who would work themselves to exhaustion, paying off fake debts rather than risk losing everything they'd built." The judge's expression hardened as Lauren continued, describing how Marcus would then orchestrate chance meetings with these targeted owners, how he would craft personas designed to appeal to each victim's specific vulnerabilities. "Rachel Winters wasn't just another target," Lauren added, looking at me directly for the first time. "She was considered the perfect mark, a successful business owner with a strong emotional attachment to her work, recently inherited money, and a trusting nature. Marcus spent months studying her before he ever approached her." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. I felt Sam's hand slip into mine as Lauren described the calculated way Marcus had orchestrated our entire relationship. "Order," Judge Montgomery commanded, though her own voice carried an edge of disgust. "Ms. Reed, continue." Lauren's testimony shifted to the development scheme, how they had used their victims' money to buy up properties in targeted neighborhoods, planning to replace family businesses with luxury developments. The debt was never real, she concluded. It was just a tool to keep their victims too exhausted and stressed to notice what was really happening. And I helped them do it. I helped them destroy people's lives. During a brief recess, Victoria pulled me aside. "They're offering a plea deal. Cooper's willing to provide evidence about other schemes, other victims we haven't identified yet. In exchange for what? Reduced sentences, asset forfeiture instead of full restitution." Victoria watched my reaction carefully. "It's your call, Rachel. You're the primary victim in this case." I thought about the 3 years I'd spent working myself to exhaustion, believing I was helping my husband. About the other women in the courtroom who had similar stories of betrayal and manipulation. "No deal," I said firmly. "They need to face full consequences. Not just for us, but for any future victims they might target." The judge's final ruling came down like a thunderbolt. Marcus and Cooper received lengthy prison sentences, their assets frozen and ordered to be liquidated for victim restitution. Lauren Reed, in exchange for her cooperation, received probation and a requirement to help identify and assist other potential victims of similar schemes. As the bailiff led Marcus away, he turned to me one last time. "Rachel, Save it." I cut him off. "Save your manipulations for your prison counselor. I've got a bakery to run." Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered again, hungry for sound bites about the sensational case. But I had something more important to say than just my story of betrayal and justice. To anyone out there who's being pressured to sacrifice everything for someone else's debt, I spoke directly to the cameras, who's working themselves to exhaustion because they believe they're helping someone they love. Stop. Ask questions. Look closely at those documents. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Angela and Sarah stood beside me, lending their voices to the message. We were no longer isolated victims, but advocates, turning our experience into a weapon against future fraud. "The hardest debts to recognize," I continued, "are the ones wrapped in love and trust. But real love doesn't demand your destruction. Real love doesn't turn your dedication into a weapon against you." As we left the courthouse steps, Diana already had her phone out, organizing the next support group meeting at the bakery. What? Marcus had intended as my destruction had become a foundation for something he could never understand. The power of women helping women, turning betrayal into strength, pain into purpose. The morning sun caught the bakery's windows as we drove past. The display case is already full for another day of business. Life would go on, sweeter now without the bitter taste of lies. The scent of fresh vanilla and warm sugar filled sweet dreams. Bakery as I pulled another batch of cookies from the oven. 6 months had passed since Marcus's sentencing, and the morning sunlight streaming through the windows felt different somehow. Clearer, brighter, untainted by lies. Dr. Sarah Bennett sat at the counter, watching me arrange pastries in the display case. "You're smiling more," she observed. "How does it feel, running the bakery without that weight on your shoulders?" I paused, considering the lightness in my movements, the absence of that constant anxiety about debt payments and Marcus's approval. Like I can breathe again. Like every success is truly mine. The bell above the door chimed as Angela Martinez entered, carrying a stack of folders. Since the trial, she'd rebuilt her consulting firm with a new mission, helping small business owners protect themselves from financial fraud. "The website launched this morning," she announced, opening her laptop. "Already have 15 signups for the workshop next week." The workshop was my idea, born from those endless nights spent unraveling Marcus's deception. Financial fraud and emotional manipulation, protecting your business and your heart. A seminar series designed to teach other entrepreneurs the warning signs we'd missed. Diana arrived next, her financial advisor's briefcase bulging with documents. The restitution payments started coming in, she reported. They've seized Marcus and Cooper's assets, including those offshore accounts. Rachel, you won't believe what they found. She spread papers across the counter, evidence of other schemes, other victims we hadn't known about during the trial. Marcus's web of deception had stretched further than any of us had imagined. Look at these dates, Diana pointed. He was running similar cons before he even met you. The debt repayment scheme wasn't just about getting your money. It was about keeping you too exhausted to notice what else he was doing. Sam burst through the door, still in her nurse's scrubs from the night shift. Turn on the news! They're covering the story! We gathered around the small TV I'd installed in the bakery's sitting area. The reporter stood outside the courthouse, discussing the broader implications of the case. The conviction of Marcus Winters and Nathan Cooper has led to a nationwide investigation into similar fraud schemes targeting small business owners. The camera panned to interviews with other victims coming forward, sharing stories that echoed my own. Women who had worked themselves to exhaustion, paying off fictional debts, believing they were helping someone they loved. This is bigger than we thought, Angela mused, taking notes. We need to expand the workshop series, maybe create an online platform. Henry Patterson hobbled in, his familiar tweed jacket dusted with morning frost. Already ahead of you, he announced, producing a proposal. The Small Business Association wants to partner with us. They want to make fraud awareness training part of their standard program. The bakery had become more than just my business. It was transforming into a center for healing and education. Every Saturday, we hosted support groups for survivors of financial abuse. The very space Marcus had tried to steal was now helping others protect themselves from people like him. Victoria Hayes arrived as we were discussing the expansion plans. I have news, she said, accepting a fresh scone. Lauren. Reed's cooperation led to the discovery of 3 more fraud rings operating on the East Coast. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division wants our help developing a training program for their agents. Lauren's transformation from accomplice to advocate had been unexpected, but powerful. After the trial, she'd dedicated herself to exposing the manipulation tactics she'd once helped employ. Her insider knowledge was proving invaluable in helping others recognize the warning signs. Michael Torres joined us, bringing updates from the banking world. We're implementing new fraud detection protocols based on what we learned from your case. Special alerts for patterns that might indicate coercive debt schemes. As my support, team discussed future plans. I walked through my bakery, touching the walls that held so many memories. The corner where I'd first met Marcus, thinking his charm meant love. The counter where I'd counted out debt payments, believing I was helping build our future. The kitchen where I'd worked endless hours, too tired to see the truth. But these spaces held new memories now. The table where Angela had first shared her story, helping me realize I wasn't alone. The window seat where Sarah Klein had cried with relief after learning her business could be saved. The display case where I'd posted the first flyer for our support group. Dr. Bennett appeared at my side. You're processing again, she observed. Share your thoughts? I was just thinking about debt, I said slowly. Not the financial kind, but the emotional debt Marcus made me feel I owed him. How hard I worked to repay something that was never real. She nodded understanding. And now? Now I understand that real love doesn't create debt. It doesn't demand payment or sacrifice. It builds you up instead of draining you dry. The morning crowd began filtering in. Regular customers who'd stood by me through the scandal. New faces drawn by our advocacy work. Each one greeted me with genuine warmth, so different from the calculated charm Marcus had used to win my trust. A young woman lingered by the counter, clutching a newspaper article about the case. I recognized the look in her eyes, the same mixture of fear and hope I'd felt when first realizing Marcus's betrayal. "Can you help me?" she asked quietly. I think my partner might be doing something similar." Angela and Diana immediately moved to welcome her. Sam pulled out a chair while I poured fresh coffee. This was what Marcus could never understand: the strength that comes from women supporting women, from turning personal pain into collective power. "First," I said, sliding a warm muffin across the counter, "tell us your story. And remember, you're not alone anymore." The morning sun streamed through my bakery windows, touching everything with golden light. The same light that had witnessed my exploitation now illuminated my transformation. Every batch of cookies, every support group meeting, every woman we helped, it was all part of a different kind of recipe. One made not of sugar and flour, but of resilience and hope. My phone buzzed, not with manipulative messages from Marcus, but with updates from our growing network of advocates and survivors. Another fraud ring exposed in Chicago. A new support group starting in Seattle. More women finding their voices, reclaiming their power. The debt that had consumed 3 years of my life was gone, replaced by something far more valuable: the knowledge that my story could help others write different endings to their own. The conference hall buzzed with energy as hundreds of women filled the seats, each carrying their own story of survival. 1 year after Marcus's conviction, I stood at the podium, facing an audience that represented everything he had never expected: strength rising from attempted destruction. "Financial abuse doesn't always look like stolen credit cards or emptied bank accounts," I began, my voice carrying across the hushed room. "Sometimes it wears designer suits and brings you flowers. Sometimes it tells you it loves you while slowly draining your spirit along with your savings." The first Financial Freedom Summit had drawn attendees from across the country: business owners, professionals, survivors, all gathered to share knowledge and build stronger defenses against predators like Marcus and Cooper. Angela Martinez stepped up beside me, her consulting expertise now focused on fraud prevention. "The patterns are consistent," she explained, displaying charts that tracked hundreds of cases similar to mine. "They target successful women who've built something valuable. They use love and trust as weapons, turning their victims' dedication against them." Victoria Hayes took the stage next, her legal insights drawing intense focus from the audience. "These predators count on silence," she declared. "They isolate their victims, make them feel ashamed of being deceived. But shame is their weapon. Knowledge is ours." The summit was more than just presentations. Between sessions, women gathered in smaller groups, sharing stories and strategies. In one corner, Diana led a workshop on recognizing financial manipulation tactics. In another, Dr. Bennett facilitated discussions about emotional recovery and rebuilding trust. Lauren Reed's session drew particular attention. Her insider perspective on how predators selected and groomed their targets provided invaluable insights. "They look for strength," she explained, her voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom, "not weakness. They want someone with resources, someone whose work ethic they can exploit." During the lunch break, I found myself surrounded by women, eager to share their experiences. A restaurant owner from Seattle who'd escaped a similar scheme. A boutique owner from Miami who'd caught the warning signs early thanks to our awareness campaign. A young entrepreneur who'd avoided a potential trap after attending one of our workshops. Sarah Klein, now running a successful advocacy organization, joined me at the table. "The FBI called again," she mentioned quietly. 3 more fraud rings exposed this month alone. Our network is making a difference." Michael Torres arrived with fresh statistics from the banking industry. "The new fraud detection protocols are working," he reported. We've flagged 30 potential schemes in the past quarter, prevented millions in potential losses. Sam, who'd taken a leave from nursing to help coordinate our growing movement, rushed over with exciting news. The governor just signed the bill. The Financial Coercion Prevention Act is now law. The legislation, sparked by our case and pushed forward by countless survivors, created new protections against financial exploitation in relationships. It was a tangible victory, proof that our pain could create positive change. A young woman approached our table, clutching a worn copy of the self-defense guide we'd published. "Your story saved my sister," she said, tears in her eyes. "We recognized the signs because of you. She got out before he could take everything," I finished gently. "I'm glad we could help." Henry Patterson, now serving as a mentor to new business owners, joined us with more updates. "The Small Business Association's fraud prevention program has gone national," he announced. "They're requiring awareness training for all new loan applicants." As the afternoon sessions began, I slipped away to check my phone. Messages poured in from our growing network of advocates and survivors. A support group launching in Chicago. A fraud prevention workshop starting in Atlanta. A legal aid clinic opening in Houston, specializing in financial abuse cases. Dr. Bennett found me scrolling through the updates. "You're processing again," she observed with her usual insight. "Share your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about debt," I admitted. "Not the fake kind Marcus created, but the real debt we owe each other. The obligation to turn our survival into something meaningful for others." She nodded, understanding. "You've more than repaid that debt. Look around. Every woman in this room represents someone who won't have to go through what you did." Back in the main hall, Victoria was outlining the next phase of our advocacy work. "We're expanding the legal network," she announced. Bono representation for victims, faster response times, better coordination with law enforcement. Diana presented the Financial Education Initiative, free workshops, online resources, practical tools for protecting business assets. "Knowledge isn't just power," she reminded the audience. "It's protection." As the day drew to a close, I found myself back at the podium, facing a room full of women who were no longer victims, but warriors. "When Marcus stole 3 years of my life," I said softly, "he thought he was destroying me. He never imagined he was creating an army." The applause that followed wasn't just approval, it was a battle cry. Each clap represented a woman who would not be silenced, would not be ashamed, would not be deceived. Later, as we gathered for the closing reception, Angela showed me the latest statistics. Our network had helped expose over 50 fraud schemes in the past year, saved countless businesses, protected innumerable dreams. "Not bad for a baker," Sam teased, squeezing my shoulder. "That's the thing about bakers," I smiled. "We know how to turn bitter experiences into something sweet. We know that transformation is possible, that healing takes time, that the right ingredients combined with patience can create something beautiful." My phone buzzed with a news alert. Another fraud ring exposed, another predator caught, another group of women freed from financial manipulation. Marcus's attempt to destroy me had instead created a movement that was destroying his kind. The debt he'd fabricated was long paid off, but the real debt, the one I owed to every woman who shared her story, who joined our fight, who turned her pain into purpose, that was a debt I would gladly spend the rest of my life repaying. Morning light streamed through the expanded windows of Sweet Dreams Bakery, illuminating a space transformed by time and purpose. 2 years to the day after Marcus's conviction, I stood in my kitchen watching a new batch of apprentices learn the art of bread making. But these weren't just baking students. They were survivors, women rebuilding their lives after escaping financial abuse. Emily, a former real estate agent who had lost everything to a scheme similar to Marcus's, carefully shaped her dough with growing confidence. The rhythm of baking, she said softly. It helps quiet the memories, the doubts. Baking is healing. I agreed, adjusting the temperature on one of our new ovens. The bakery's expansion had been funded entirely by the restitution payments from Marcus and Cooper's seized assets. Every piece of new equipment, every renovated space, stood as testament to transformation. Victoria Hayes entered through the back door, carrying fresh court documents. The appeals court upheld every conviction, she announced. Marcus and Cooper's sentences stand. More importantly, the precedent is set for prosecuting similar cases. Diana looked up from where she was teaching a financial literacy class in our new community space. The former storage room now hosted daily workshops, its walls lined with resources and success stories. How many cases has the precedent affected so far? 73 convictions across 12 states, Victoria replied. The Sweet Dreams precedent, they're calling it in legal circles. Sarah Klein arrived with more news from our growing advocacy network. 3 more safe houses opened this month, she reported. Temporary housing for women escaping financial abuse, with on-site business counseling and legal aid. The safe houses had been Angela Martinez's idea, born from her own experience of having nowhere to go when her business was first targeted. Now they operated in 15 cities, offering sanctuary and practical support to women rebuilding their lives. Dr. Bennett, who now ran regular support groups in our expanded sitting area, watched a new survivor enter hesitantly. The hardest step, she observed, is walking through that door, admitting you've been deceived by someone you loved. I remembered my own journey from deception to clarity. The second hardest step is learning to trust again, not just others, but yourself. Sam burst in, excitement radiating from her face. The governor just signed it. The Financial Empowerment Act is official. The legislation, inspired by cases like mine, mandated fraud prevention education in schools and created stronger protections for small business owners. Michael Torres arrived with Lauren Reed, both carrying boxes of new educational materials. Lauren's transformation from accomplice to advocate had exceeded everyone's expectations. Her insights into predatory tactics had proven invaluable in developing prevention strategies. The Banking Oversight Committee adopted our recommendations, Michael announced. New regulations for detecting coercive debt schemes, plus mandatory training for loan officers in recognizing financial abuse patterns. Henry Patterson hobbled in, his familiar tweed jacket now adorned with an advocacy pin. The Business Incubator Program is ready to launch, he reported. Full scholarships for survivors ready to start over. The incubator had been my dream, a way to help women rebuild not just their confidence, but their economic independence. The program would provide mentorship, seed funding, and practical support for survivors starting new businesses. Through the front windows, I watched a group of women enter, participants in our latest awareness workshop. Each carried the weight of experience, but also the spark of determination that marked survivors rather than victims. The waiting list grows every week, Diana noted, reviewing the workshop registrations. Word is spreading. Women are learning to recognize the warning signs before it's too late. A familiar face appeared in the doorway. Amanda Chen, one of our first success stories. She'd escaped her own Marcus just months after my story went public. Now she ran a thriving consulting firm specializing in financial security for small businesses. Guess who called? Amanda announced triumphantly. The National Women's Business Council. They want to partner with us on a nationwide awareness campaign. The news rippled through the bakery, energizing everyone present. From a simple bakery to a national movement, the transformation would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. Dr. Bennett joined me at the counter. "You're quiet," she observed. "Where did your thoughts take you?" "I was thinking about debt," I admitted. "The real kind. Not the fictional debt Marcus used to control me, but the debt I owe to every woman who shared her story, who helped build this movement. That's not debt, she corrected gently. That's legacy. As if to emphasize her point, a young woman approached the counter. I recognized the look in her eyes, the same mixture of fear and hope I'd felt when first realizing Marcus's betrayal. "I read about you," she said quietly. "About what your husband did, I think. I think I might be in a similar situation." Within moments, our support system mobilized. Diana gathered financial resources, Victoria outlined legal options, Dr. Bennett offered immediate counseling. The seamless response of a community built from shared pain and collective strength. "The first step is the hardest," I told her, sliding. A fresh-baked muffin across the counter. "But look around, you're not taking it alone." Later, as the day wound down, I stood in my kitchen surrounded by the warmth of ovens and the scent of fresh bread. The space that Marcus had tried to steal now served as sanctuary for others escaping men like him. My phone buzzed with updates from our advocacy network. Another fraud ring exposed in Dallas. A new support group launching in Phoenix. More women finding their way to freedom. Sam found me lost in thought. "Remember what you told me the day Marcus was arrested?" she asked. "About turning bitter ingredients into something sweet?" I smiled, watching the last rays of sunlight paint the bakery in shades of gold. That's the magic of baking and healing. With the right recipe, even the darkest experiences can rise into something beautiful. Through the windows, I could see women gathering for the evening support group. Each carried their own story of betrayal and survival. Each represented a future Marcus hadn't counted on. Women warning other women, protecting each other, transforming pain into power. The debt he'd fabricated was long paid, but the legacy of strength it inspired? That would keep growing, rising, like well-tended dough, nourishing generations to come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.